Okay, everyone, welcome to the 6 o'clock session. We've got Nick Rose from the Toronto Rock, Oakville Rock, former Orangeville Northman. Nick's going to talk to us about some advanced goaltending concepts. Many of you guys were on here for Christian Del Bianco's session on the fundamentals of the youth goaltender. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap on this. It's really tough to delineate between a Bantam because you get some Bantams that are a good-sized kid and some that are average and some that are smaller. So we've kept this pretty generic, but please understand there will be some overlap. If you've got any questions for Nick, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We'll get those covered off as they come in, and if it in relation to a particular subject, Nick, I'll just relay them to you. If it's something you're going to cover later, you can tell me, and we'll come back to that, okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So it looks like, you know what, we're pretty ready to go here. I'm going to take care of one housekeeping item. Thanks some sponsors for this first. Wouldn't be possible to bring you this without support from Uncommon Fit, the Sticks and Picks podcast, Manitoba Lacrosse, Major Series Lacrosse, Apex Lacrosse Events, the Franklin Parr Team, and Bear Paw Lacrosse Events. So now that I got the sponsorship read out of the way, tell Hammer I'm coming for the PA job. Now that we got this out of the way, we're going to hand this over to Nick. We've got some videos to share, some information, but like I said, throw anything in the Q&A. Nick, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me join in on this. This is awesome. You guys putting this together, letting people obviously just kind of sign on and watch some lacrosse people talk about their knowledge of the game. Like Brad said, I come from Orangeville, Ontario. Grew up loving the Northmen. We have a junior A team there. I always wanted to play for the junior A Northmen. That was always my first and foremost goal. And it wasn't until I got to junior that I kind of realized that I would have a chance at maybe becoming a NLL goalie, which my career in NLL has been an awesome experience, and wouldn't change it for the world. It's probably the best job I've ever had. So I didn't have a chance to watch Christian's video yet, but I'm sure he put out a lot of good stuff. I do have I'm kind of lucky. I have some clips of some drills that people can be doing at home that coaches can kind of put into their playbook for practices. We've been doing some online training sessions here at the Toronto Rock Athletics Center. Challen Rogers, the captain of the Rock, and myself. So, excuse me. I've been
Nick, sorry.
Yeah.
Those Zooms, they're happening on Mondays traditionally, yeah?
Yeah, so we kind of just started them for the month of May, and we're continuing with at least the next couple weeks while everybody's kind of stuck at home. So Mondays at 3 are the players, and I'm doing the goalies at 4 p.m.
And how can people sign up for that?
So they can just go to our website, www.torontorockac.com, and right on the homepage there should be a splash page to register for them. We just have the upcoming ones live today, so people can just sign on. It's free. We're just basically taking registration to kind of know what our viewership and that kind of stuff is.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. So before I show some clips, I'll just talk about a few kind of things I believe in for being a goalie and a lacrosse player foremost. I'm able to coach a lot too. I coach in the Orangeville Northman organization. I've been with the Pee-wees and Bantams the last 2 summers. I was going to help with the midget team this summer. So I've been around a lot of Orangeville kids the last little while, and a few different age groups of goalies. So that kind of helps me in determining how to kind of push a goalie I'm working with. And then here at the track as well, we have a lot of programs, camps, all that kind of stuff that we run that I'm able to work with a lot of goalies. So it's been good to kind of actually help myself become a better coach, I think. And then I also have the chance to cross with Dylan Ward and Evan Kirk that the last few summers we've done our own kind of camps only about once a year, but now we're starting to work with specific organizations in Ontario and trying to get to see. So for example, we've been the last 2 summers we've done 3 or 4 sessions each summer with the Peterborough Lakers organization, and at each session we get to work with every single goalie in there in the Lakers organization. So from tyke up until midget, they have their own time slot, and we get to kind of spend an hour or an hour and a half with them each time we go up there to really put them through the paces, teach them a few things that they didn't know. So I think that's kind of what we've turned this into, is focusing on working with specific organizations and kind of keeping it in-house for the Northmen. We get, it also gets all the goalies around each other, so they get to kind of watch each other and get to know maybe some of the goalies that they're looking up to. If there's a novice Northman and he gets to stick around and watch the midget Northman players or goalies go to work and maybe chat with them. It's actually been kind of cool to see the interaction. And even up in Peterborough, the midget goalies stick around to help us with the tyke and novice sessions to obviously understand. Like Peterborough's got it pretty good where they've made it clear they want former players and goalies given back. So that's kind of been neat to see the older kids helping us out, like even me and Evan Kirk, try and put the goalies through the paces and run their own drills and be able to kind of keep that knowledge going forward for if they go out to a practice or whatever. First thing I have written down for obviously this is more directed, more advanced goalies. Once you're kind of out of, I guess, novice peewee, starting to kind of take it a bit more serious, the first thing I have written down is to be a good teammate. I know sometimes goalies can kind of get put on an island or whatever. Some people think goalies can be the weirdos or whatever, but if you're a good person and you're a good teammate, that means the guys in front of you, your defense is going to want to battle a bit harder for you, right? So being a goalie and defense, it is one unit. That's how I view it. The goal of the defense and the goalie is to keep the ball out of your net. So those two kind of groups have to be working hand in hand, and goes a long way if you're a good person and a good teammate. If you're starting to take being a lacrosse goalie more serious, I think the first thing that you need to think about is when you get to practice, refuse to just be a target. So if you have to go to your coach, say you've had a couple practices in a row where you've just kind of showed up and there's been no plan for the goalie. Like basically it's just getting right into helping the players get better. You need to take ownership of that, and you need to go to your coach and say, I don't want to be a target tonight. I want to work on my game. Here's a few things that I think I need to work on. If you can implement a few drills to help me with this, great. If not, this is what I want to do. This is a drill that I really want to work on to help my game. So I think a lot of times, Brad and I were just talking actually, a lot of times, especially with younger kids, the coaches, if there isn't a specific goalie coach, which I don't really consider myself a specific goalie coach. Like I'd like to think that I can coach an offense and a defense and just be a good lacrosse coach. But obviously I have a lot more experience being a goalie myself, being around a lot of goalies. So if coaches don't kind of understand that they need to worry about their goalie as well, a lot of times the goalie is just a target in practice. And that's really what myself and I think a lot of the goalies giving back their time these days is hoping to change. Like we want to kind of put it at the forefront for coaches and I even for the NLL, like if we're going to keep expanding, we do need to worry about developing more quality goalies to have enough for these expansion teams. So a lot of us kind of want to put being a goaltender at the forefront, and it starts with if it's at a young age or if it's at junior or whatever. Once you kind of realize that this is something you might want to do, you need to take ownership of that and go to your coaches and say, I want to work on this or work on whatever in your game. So I'm just trying to read my notes here as I go. So obviously, I'm sure with Christian talking about some of the basics, I'm just going to start showing a couple clips, and these kind of be adjusted to any level. So for these, it is a bit more basic and easy, but the more you speed things up, or if you add in an extra shot or whatever, it can be adjusted to pretty much any level of goaltender. So first and foremost, for a goalie developing, we got to be feeling our post. We have to know where we are in the net. First thing I tell a goalie, if he's a tyke or a novice, I just show him, I put him through this first drill and make him step across the crease, tap his post, out for a warm-up shot, back to his net, or tap the post, and step to the other side, all while being in his position of having his shoulders up, stick between his legs. It's important to know where you are in the net, and by the time you get to maybe the NLL level, you kind of have a good sense of where the net is. But even if you're watching a game, National Lacrosse League, just maybe take a few minutes to count how many times a goalie taps his post with his stick or with his hand, and it'll probably kind of make you laugh, because it's such a simple thing, but it is so important to kind of gauge how far you are to each side of the net. And I think it's important to be maybe the first thing a goalie learns, or a goalie is kind of the first thing he's thinking about when he's getting ready to take a shot is feel that post, find out where I am, and then react. So I think I can share my screen here. I'm just going to get the video ready.
So Nick, while you're doing that, question came in, and I know exactly what it's related to, because we had the same question for Christian. But would you ever suggest using landmarks and using stuff on the board for goaltenders to achieve their angles?
When you say stuff on the board, like around the crease or on the boards?
No, I'm thinking the question means towards the boards, like the blue line that you can see.
I got you.
Some of the arenas are different, right? So
yeah, I guess it would help in practices. Obviously, in a game, you can't be doing that. But if the goalie feels like that's necessary, then sure. But from what I've found coaching a lot of the goalies, they do pick it up pretty easily in regards to getting in that habit of feeling their post. It's funny because a lot of the younger goalies I work with, like say novice and younger, it is kind of tough to explain why you want to like kind of find where you are in the net. And then by the end of it, I've had goalies that have bent their shaft within 20 minutes of just tapping their post, because they're just kind of going crazy, hammering it. They don't know why they're doing it, but they know it's something they have to do. So I don't think it would hurt to kind of have some kind of labels on towards the boards or whatever, but I guess by the time they kind of figure it out, I don't know if it's totally necessary.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, this is just so I'll show two clips here. One is the one I was just talking about in terms of the first drill I do with any goalie at any level is, and obviously the higher experienced goalies, I do it faster and do it more as a warm-up drill. But for the younger goalies and less experienced, this is all about just your footwork, stepping across the crease, tapping your post, shot, tapping your post to the other side, just to get a good feeling for where you are in the net, and obviously working on your footwork as well. And the second clip is just something for the coaches. Give the goalie 2 minutes at the start of practice just to kind of get their legs going, and this helps with also being able to step across to the other side of the net and knowing where the posts are. So I'll just play these, and then oops. Hopefully I can figure out how to okay. Okay, here we go. So share my screen. Okay.
Yep.
Is that showing up?
Yep.
Okay. For this warm-up drill, we're strictly working on footwork. We're going to start on the side of the crease, and we're basically just going to get in our position, stick between our legs, head forward, and we're going to step across to the net, feel our post, step out, take the shot, step back to the net, always feeling your post, okay? Especially if you're a young kid, we want to get in the habit of knowing where our net is, okay? Once we step back to the net, we're stepping out to the other side of the crease, and then we're going to do it all over again back to the original side. If you're at home and you don't have much of an area to do this, you can eliminate the shot. This is all about your footwork and feeling your post, okay? Just getting in that habit. So we're going to go over to the side of the crease, and this is how it's done, okay? In my position, stick between my legs, head forward, feet forward, going to get to the net, tap the post, shot, tap the post again, out to the other side. And then once I got here. Okay, so that's probably good for that drill. So for more advanced goaltenders, we want to speed this up, right? I in the clip was obviously going somewhat slow to be able to kind of show where less experienced and younger goalies how to do the drill. But this is a drill that I do all the time in practice. If one of my teammates is just kind of hanging around, shooting the ball afterwards or whatever, this is something I'll work on for a couple minutes. Just strictly focus on footwork and obviously knowing where I am in the net, and just to kind of finish off a good practice or whatever. I'll just talk a bit more about a couple things, and then I'll kind of figure out what if I'm going to show any other clips. Okay. For more advanced goaltenders, I think it is very important to, one, be good with your stick, two, be able to be able to recognize where a loose ball is, and three, getting to it quickly. Okay, I know that maybe being good with your stick and loose balls and that kind of stuff isn't something you exactly think of right away about being a good goalie, but it's so important that if you make a save and it bounces off to the side somewhere, that you're able to go get it and react quickly to it, because if you get that ball in your stick, that's just one less possession for the other team, right? So we're trying to kind of start to work on things that help us succeed, right? And I think everybody would agree that the other team not having the ball helps a goaltender succeed a bit more. So we want to be outside all the time, working on our stick. Okay, we don't want to just kind of show up to the rink, grab it, go out for practice, and whatever. Okay, so that's another thing that I think goalies that are a bit older and a bit more experienced need to focus on, right? Like, we don't want to be and it kind of makes me laugh in the summertime. Some of the goalies I've worked with will show up to the rink with their wooden stick all taped up nice and tight, and their cat gut will be all the way in, and I'll say, like, how come you didn't untie that or loosen it up just to kind of sit in your room or whatever? Because you want to take care of your stick first and foremost, but you also want to be able to perform and make a good pass, or if it comes down to making a save with the side of your stick and it's all kind of bungled up or whatever, then that's an issue, right? So I do think goalies need to take a bit more of an ownership on loose balls around the net, being able to pass the ball well. It's funny in Orangeville, like I've coached with Josh Sanderson the last couple summers, and first thing he tells the goalies is I need you to get the ball up the floor as quick as you can. So it doesn't even really have much to do with stopping the ball, because that's a given that we need our goalies to stop the ball. But if our team is going to succeed in what we're doing, being say your team's a run and gun team or whatever, which we try to coach like, you need your goalie to be able to make a save, get the ball in his stick, and get it to his teammate as quick as he can. And you watch the NLL, it's such a fast-paced game, and we have so many great transition players that capitalize on most of the breakaways or 2-on-1s that if you're not able to get the ball to them, then it's going to become an issue with your coaches and teammates if that's kind of the strategy that your team's looking for.
Nick, we got a two-part question that's based on that. So
yeah,
we've got a player on here, and she's entering her third year. She started in second year midget, so she's in her second year of intermediate lacrosse.
Okay.
She's got a bad habit of lifting her stick when saving a shot.
Yeah.
You got any advice on stopping bad habits like that?
So we obviously try to get to that early. So when I'm working with young goalies, that's maybe the second or third thing we tell them after feeling their post and keeping their head up or whatever, is to keep that stick down. So a good and it's
more of a mental thing that.
Yeah, it's definitely more mental, but the only thing that I can kind of suggest is in practices, or if you're even at home with a sibling or whatever, have them just shoot at your 5-hole. So, but even though you know that shot's coming there, just get in that habit and kind of try and change the mental of lifting that stick. So if it's just stuck on the ground, it might not be helping you react to the ball or whatever, but it is kind of changing your mindset of just that feeling of having the stick touch the ground all the time, right? But it is tough for the older kids, midget, intermediate. But I do suggest if that's what you have a bad habit of, then that's what you should be working on at every practice. Focusing on keeping that stick down and then making the save from there. But if you know that that's an issue for you, then you need to focus on correcting it.
Nick, I think you got some papers on top of the mic or something, because you're going in and out.
Oh, am I? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so did you get any of that?
Yep. Yeah. You were just going in and out. That's all.
Okay.
But
so, yeah, just focus on that in practice then.
And so she had part two was, do you have any pointers for throwing the long bombs?
Again, I think it is experience, right? So when I was a kid, like I obviously was able to just go over to the arena in Orangeville all the time and just shoot the ball during the day. And I did play out in field lacrosse. I was an attackman, so I was always working on my stick and kind of my whatever dangles or fakes and all that kind of stuff. So the best suggestion I can give you is go to a wall, just practice passing and maybe kind of cradling and that kind of stuff, and being good with your stick first, and then get a partner and just work on throwing the ball as long as you can, or as far as you can. And the more you do that, try and hit people on the run. This is obviously something you can work on with your teammates in practice to develop that chemistry. I think it just comes with experience and practice, like anything else. I remember in junior, my mindset was I would work on in practice, and obviously I used a big heavy wooden stick, and I would try throwing the ball as far as I could. And when I realized I could throw it basically outside of the far end glass, is when I started to kind of be able to develop touch passes and that kind of stuff. And I remember being able to hit Adam Jones right as soon as he stepped on the floor in the second period. And it is amazing how much it can help your team if you are good at not only the long balls, but possessing the ball and getting it to your teammates quickly.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, goaltending is tough because you got big, bulky gear on, and you're trying to make a distance pass. And I think it's important for goaltenders to know that, you know, you get to the rink and you've got no equipment on, grab a bucket and a teammate and start throwing the ball, whether it's short, long, whatever it might be. But I've noticed over the years, you know, a lot of the best goalies throwing their outlets, they always predominantly throw overhand. We've seen a few guys through the years who drop sidearm.
Yep.
And they all seem to come around that at some point. And it, you know, you being in the crease, you can obviously, there's a guy in front of you, throwing that sidearm pass is usually a last option to get around someone more than anything.
Yeah, for sure. And that comes with experience. When I'm teaching a young kid just starting out passing the ball, and they have the big upper body on, they can barely get their stick up to by their head. I just have them rest their stick on the top of their shoulder pad and just try and be able just to push it forward. So while we're not technically like pulling it back and passing, I do want kids just starting out to just get it here and push it forward, because a lot of times, especially in the summertime with cement floors, if you throw it half the distance, it's going to get to the guy with the bounce pass, right?
Right.
Or the girl. So we really want to focus on being able to throw the ball overhand. And if it is just a push forward because you can't bring it. And the other thing is we don't want to bring the stick way back and drop the ball in our net or anywhere really. So we do want to focus on having control of the ball first and foremost, and then being able to be a better passer. But we do need to work on throwing it overhand first, and then in practice, try out in some drills about throwing around your teammates or whatever to get a bit more used to that. But yeah, that's a great question.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, a couple other things I've written down here is knowledge of the game. So when I'm coaching a young kid, maybe an A quality goaltender, I'm starting to kind of teach them the rules. So whether it's in the last minute or two of a period, and your team's up by a goal, and one of your defensive teammates is kind of running up the floor in your own end, and they're looking like they're going to get stripped of the ball, calling a timeout. So your team maintains possession. Obviously, being able to pull the ball back into your crease, right? Just using little things to your advantage, I think can only help you. And if you're somebody that your coaches can rely on to kind of make the right play at the right time, make a huge save, obviously, but even further than that, just being able to understand the game of lacrosse is huge. And I think that helps once you get a bit older, especially for film watching. So we watch a lot of film on other shooters around the National Lacrosse League, and every week, every game day, we're doing game film. So I think if you kind of understand what other teams are trying to do, or what other offenses are trying to do, that only helps you, right? So I think once a goaltender kind of starts to get to the midget age is when they can start to do some game film, and that's put on the coaches as well. But I think again, the goalies have to take some ownership and help themselves by, if it's watching NLL games, if your games are are filmed, if it's watching your own game, to kind of pick out a few things that you think you can fix or improve upon in practice. Okay. So if we're trying to go to some advanced thoughts on the game of box lacrosse, then it really does come down to watching a bit more film and then executing that in practice, right? So we don't want to just show up to practice and not really know what we want to work on, okay? So I know I come to practice, I have a pretty good idea how our coaches run our practices. We usually have about 3 or 4 different practice plans throughout the season that they will implement. So I have a pretty good idea of what we're working on, but my job as a goalie is to think about and focus on how this drill can improve my game, right? Not just kind of, oh, it's this drill again. I really don't want to do this. Like, oh, I'm just going to stand here and hope it hits me or whatever. If we're trying to get to that next level, then we need to show up to practice with a purpose and each drill with a purpose, and understand how I can improve my game with this specific thing.
I think if there's, a lack of film or a lack of video equipment, whatever it might be, I mean, you can go back to the Chugger days where he actually had a notebook and kept track of who the different shooters were. And I think that's important in especially Bantam and Midget, where there's not that film. I mean, you're playing against people in zone and you're seeing teams at tournaments that you're going to see in qualifiers.
Yep.
That, if you're a goalie, it's okay to actually write stuff down after a game. It's not something that we see very often, and it's not very common. But, if you really want to remember that, you go down after the game, or you have your parents in the stands say, write down who scored on me, how he scored on me, what saves I made. It's okay to do that, and it's okay to reflect on it.
Yeah, and that, especially in this day and age, like with phones or whatever, like I just have a bunch of things that I want to talk about on a notepad here on my phone. It's so easy if you're just finished a game and maybe one guy specifically on the other team or girl got a hold of or got the better of you on that night, but you wrote down how they shot on you or how they scored on you, and then the next game you got the better of them. So it's such an easy thing to do, and you're dead on with that comment. Is it doesn't have to be game film. I should have specified that, but if you have it in your brain, I think that's kind of what I'm hoping to accomplish here, is to kind of put a few different thoughts in people's heads about being a goalie and think different things to focus on, right? And I think
yeah, well, there's some great concepts you've shared so far, Nick. So
yeah, thanks. I think that comes down to goalie intuition too, and I know it's kind of a funny statement to make, but sometimes when you're in the net, your intuition takes over, and if we really break it down, being a goaltender is a guessing game at most of the time, and we're just trying to make it an educated guessing game, because if we're being honest, like, we don't 100% know a shooter's going to shoot here, but if we've seen it enough times, played against somebody enough times, we can kind of start to predict and put together a pattern of where shots are going to go, where players are trying to get on the floor to receive a pass to get their shot. So, like, even with quick sticks, like, you look at a guy like Shane Jackson from Georgia, one of the best goal scorers in the National Lacrosse League. He loves that back door. So if I'm out on the right side,
I think there's a loose wire where we lost your voice for a second.
Can you hear me now?
Jackson's quick stick.
Okay, so yeah, just thinking about how players, or where they want to get on the floor, where they're successful. So Shane Jackson, great quick stick on the backside of the crease, right? So if I'm out for an outside shot on the right side, I automatically know in my brain that I have to get to this back post as quick as possible. I don't want him scoring that. But even when you are thinking about it, sometimes the player's successful, but it gives me an advantage knowing how players are gonna kind of play things. What, did you hear all that?
Yeah, I heard most of it, and then you're dying out at the end. I don't know what's going on. Can't.
Okay, hopefully it.
I can hear you now. You're good.
Okay. Yeah. So another thing I wanted to touch on is communication, and that goes for being on the floor with communicating while you're on the floor in terms of helping out your defense, and maybe your even your offensive guys if you're yelling like the ball is coming, if you're passing to them. But we want to be talkative. We don't want to be just standing in our net, nice and quiet, and just trying to make a save. We also kind of want to add in about being communicative to your teammates and in practice as well. So this comes down to your communication with your coaches. I want the older goalies to express to their coaches what they like, what they dislike about certain, maybe the looks that the other team's getting. So, for example, when we're doing our game film, I'll talk with our defensive coach, Bruce Codd, about their power play, our team's power play, and where we want the ball shot from. So a lot of times, depending on what team you're playing on, obviously every team has 4 or 5 really skilled players for the power play, but a lot of times we can single out one player that we want shooting the ball. So he will kind of put a plan together of how to force the ball to there for the shot, and I know it's coming. Which, again, it's not going to be 100%, but if we can kind of control, or if I can control where the shot's coming from, I'm going to have a better chance to kind of make the save, obviously. Same as about drills in practice, right? If you dislike a certain drill, if you don't think it's helping you, I know I talked a bit earlier about taking ownership in practice. Same thing here. Go to your coaches. I'm sure they're happy. Maybe not every coach, but I'm sure most coaches want to have their goaltender succeed, right? A lot of teams have to rely on their goaltender to win, or at least to close out close games and all that. So I think any coach would be out of their mind not to listen to their goaltender on what their likes and dislikes are, especially in practice for shooting drills and just if you need to take 5 minutes to work on your footwork or your stick again, I think you just need to do that and obviously just take responsibility and put your game as a goalie in your own hands. Just looking here. Was there any other questions, Brad?
Yeah, it was one of them. You know, it's pretty intriguing because I face this consistently, but I'm glad it's going to get your opinion on it and not mine. So, why do you think the USA is having trouble developing box goalies?
That's a great question. I do think they're just behind us because the game of box has obviously been behind Canada for a long time, and they're making great strides up there. I know US Box is doing a lot of good things in terms of helping to develop box lacrosse players up there. I think it's just been a slow process over the last 20, 25 years of box lacrosse kind of becoming popular there, and we put a focus on box lacrosse a bit over field lacrosse. I personally think in Canada, whereas it's the reverse in the US. And I do think that they're getting better though in terms of their goaltending, but again, like I think that if US Boxla or a group can kind of figure out to go up there and spend a couple years developing their goalies, then that's only going to help the overall game of box lacrosse, especially at the NLL level for us. If there was ever a US goalie to break in be regarded as the top goalie in the league, that's a great thing for the league in my mind.
Yeah. So the little bit of a different question, but box and field are pretty different in terms of protection for the goalies.
Yeah.
And does it hurt being in goal and box? Have you had any major injuries? And if you have, what are they?
I've been pretty lucky, to be honest with you, with injuries. I'm going to knock on wood here, but I think the only major injury, I guess, would be I had a sprained MCL in my knee when I played out in Coquitlam in BC, and that happened just coming across the net, and I fell down to make a save, and player fell on my leg, and that took a few weeks to kind of get back playing again, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that bad. So I've been very lucky. You're always gonna kind of have some bruises and a few bumps along the road, but I think overall we're pretty well protected in the box lacrosse game, and that's actually a great kind of leeway into talking about equipment as well. I do think kind of in Ontario we have a bit of an equipment issue in terms of goalies want to wear as big of equipment as they can, and I don't think that's helping the overall development of the individual goalies. Okay, so we want to make sure we're wearing the proper gear. I try to tell the younger goalies that I'm working with not to go to a wooden stick until they're big enough and it actually makes sense. I think a lot of times these young goalies have either, whether it's a wooden stick or the big wall stick, they have the stick that's covering their legs. So it just doesn't make much sense to me for a novice or peewee goalie to have a big massive stick that's covering their legs when their leg pads would be there to cover it. So I prefer to kind of have the younger kids use a smaller Tupperware stick or whatever to get better at passing the ball. Actually, is one of the main reasons. And then once they start to get to Bantam and midget, I would suggest going to a wooden stick as long as that's in the rules. I know there's always talk about maybe changing that, but if it's in the rules, then I think once you're big enough, you do need to go to a wooden stick, because really at the end of the day, you're kind of doing your team a disadvantage. So like when I think about senior lacrosse, like I've always kind of agreed with the thought that we should maybe play with the NLL equipment for goaltenders, but at the same time, as long as it's a rule that we're allowed to use a wooden goalie stick, I'm going to use it because I'm putting my team in a better position if I'm going to be on the same level as a goalie on the other end. So it just doesn't make sense to go to a smaller stick at that level if the guy across from you is not going to be using the same, right? So I do think hopefully they clean up kind of some of the equipment stuff and kind of make it like I would be totally fine with them going to NLL rules across the board for senior, junior, minor.
We lost you again. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
How far back did you lose me?
Just you'd be okay with them, taking the Woody out.
Yeah, I just think I think it would be great for the game of lacrosse, and especially the goalies, to go to kind of the smaller equipment or NLL rules, if you will.
Is that for development or like preparation?
Yeah, so like for the younger kids especially, using the smaller stick is definitely for development, because it doesn't help a young goalie to wear as big of equipment as possible and have as big of a stick and not have to move or whatever, right? We want our young goalies learning how to play the position and having to move, step to the ball, use their stick. So a lot of times, like with myself, Evan Kirk, Dylan Ward, you've probably seen D Ward's save of the year from this NOL season all over social media, where he kind of reaches back and grabs out with a stick. And some people might think that's luck or whatever, but it's not. Like we grew up with the small sticks. So we've all been practicing with our practicing on our stick work, whether it's even shooting with a player stick and whatnot. So we kind of grew up with the small plastic sticks, and I think it's helped a lot of us, especially in the NLL, having to kind of make a few more desperation, I guess, if you will, stick saves. So I think kids, at least up until major bantam, midget, should be using the proper sized equipment and stick to help themselves develop all parts of their game, not just standing there and saving the ball, if you get what I mean.
Yep, absolutely.
I think that's pretty much all the notes I had here. So if there's any more questions or anything else you want me to touch on, Brad, I'm happy to do that.
No, you know what? I mean, in terms of concepts and stuff, it was a perfect segue from Christians. You guys, like I said, there was a little overlap, which was almost expected.
Yeah.
The goaltending is just it's a non-taught position in terms of, you know, people in lacrosse. I mean, there's no goaltender coaches. There really isn't. And if it's not guys like yourself and others giving back to it and helping those young kids and young people out, it's tough.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the guys around, at least around Ontario, like the NOL guys, the Dylan Ward, myself, Kirky, Christian's doing a great job. I know he started some stuff out in BC. Even like when I think back to maybe some of the older guys that are out of the league now, or like Brandon Miller was one of the guys that I can kind of point at that helped me develop my game, and that obviously has something to do with being an Orangeville kid as well. But he, as long as we have some people willing to put in the work and recognize that it's important, and I know I'm biased, but it's the most important position on the floor for either team.
Probably a pretty good bias opinion to have.
Yeah, pretty much at any level too, and that's not just the NOL. That's like I've said, I've coached Pee Wee, Bantam, and was going to coach midget this past summer, and our goalies have always been our best player. So if your team, I think the biggest takeaway I want people to take away from this is for the coaches is to recognize how important the goaltending position is and start to think outside the box on some of the drills and development of your goalies, because it is such an important position, and without goaltenders developing over the next 5 to 10 years, we could be in a bit of a crisis for our league, for the NLL, if we don't have a surplus of high quality goalies coming in, and we need to put that on us to develop them.
So a couple questions here. What percentage is reading the shooter's body language versus reacting to seeing the ball?
Yeah, so like I was saying before about goaltending being a guessing game, so I kind of laugh in practice because I'll be talking to a teammate just on the side getting water. Like if it's Challen, I'll be like, so how come you shot short side top corner that time? And a lot of times, if you ask your teammates, a lot of times most of them don't know why. Like if they're just coming around the corner and see a spot, they're likely going to shoot there. So so it is tough to narrow down what exactly a player is going to do, but we can only focus on where their stick is. So if it's up high, obviously an overhand shot is probably the toughest shot to stop in my mind, because a player can put it in pretty much any corner of the net. But if their stick's up high, we know that we can get up a bit bigger up top, because him or her have a good chance to put it over a shoulder. But if they drop it as an underhand shot, we know that the only place for it to go is up. So for a player to be able to hit the top corner with their stick down low,
Yeah.
we can basically cut the net in half, because if we get out and go down and they put it top corner somehow, then good on the player. Like,
Pretty talented player.
What's that?
That's a pretty talented player.
Exactly. So we want to kind of, like, obviously with cutting down the angles and all that stuff, it's more just trying to put yourself in the best position to succeed. And if you know that once he drops his stick or she drops a stick, you can get out and go down, then that's something you have to be focused on. Like, we need to be ready for those moments of being able to react.
So one more question and then one comment, and then I'll thank you for your time. But so do you use anything for protection on the back of your hands? I tend to take shots there. I was wondering if there's anything specific to help legally modify the gloves to protect the hands better. Now, I know there's an item out there for warm-up and practice.
Yeah. So I use the ones from Bodum there. I think there's been quite a few out there by different companies, but I use the one by Bodum. I think it's called, I forget what it's called. I better not butcher it. And it covers right over the top of the hand. And I use it in every practice and morning shoot around, warm-ups right before the game. And I've never really had an issue with my hands in terms of getting an injury, or I've had the odd bruise or whatever, but I just use it because why not? Like, if you're taking hundreds of shots in practice and one gets you in the wrong spot and you have a broken hand, then how silly would you feel? So I really encourage more padding on those areas, especially your fingers and that kind of stuff, in practices and warm-ups and that kind of scenarios. But I think the best one I've used is from Bodum.
I just looked them up real quick. They're called Busted Knuckles from Bodum.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought they were. But so yeah, but those ones seem to be the most protective I've had. I know there is one that comes with a gate glove that just goes over the top as well. It's okay too. Mine ripped on me pretty quick, so I think those are more pegged towards the younger kids.
So Nick, I'm going to end it on this comment because it's clearly coming from another goaltender.
All right.
But great wealth of information passed along from Nick, well organized and nicely presented. As much as anything, Nick Rose has established in this session that lacrosse goalies are clearly athletes of superior intelligence.
I like that. Can we get that out on Twitter or what?
I can probably screenshot it and send that out there. But
yeah, I appreciate that comment, but I couldn't agree more.
So Nick, I wanted to thank you for coming on board here. Having yourself, Dylan, and Christian, it was a kind of a progression for us. So your time I know is invaluable. I appreciate you donating that. I know it wasn't a twist of an arm to get you. You said yes right away, but it's still an hour out of your day. Interesting times that we're living in. We're all kind of craving lacrosse right now, and the information that you passed on for these coaches and players. We're gonna have that posted in perpetuity. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for bringing me on board. Great job putting all this together. I'm sure everybody's appreciating it and trying to keep busy. So hopefully everybody stays safe and we can get back to playing lacrosse soon. Okay, everyone. Well, listen, remember, you can sign up for Nick's player and goalie session with himself and Challen Rogers at TorontoRockAC.com. We end on Saturday. The OLA has their session on Sunday, and Nick's is on Monday. I think that's a great progression to keep your kids and coaches involved in the game. Awesome. All right. You have a great night, Nick. Thanks. Thanks, Brad. Take care.